destroy its brain, you can erase its memory, and it will still come back. Not as a copy, not as a clone, but as the same animal. There is a creature on Earth that makes starfish regeneration look weak. You can slice it into pieces, and each piece becomes a complete new animal. You can destroy its brain, and it grows a new one. You can erase its memories, and somehow they come back. This creature is called the planarian. Planaria are tiny freshwater flatworms that live in ponds, streams, and damp environments all over the world. Most of them are only a few millimeters long, thin as paper, and completely unremarkable at first glance. If you saw one in the wild, you'd probably assume it was just another harmless worm sliding along a rock. But biologically, planaria are one of the most astonishing animals nature ever created, not because they attack, but because they refuse to die. Unlike a starfish, which needs a part of its central disc to regenerate, a planarian doesn't need a core at all. If you cut one into 10 pieces, you don't get 10 fragments struggling to survive. You get 10 fully functional animals. Each fragment regrows everything it's missing: a head, a tail, organs, a nervous system, and even its brain. And that's where things get really interesting. Planaria don't just regenerate tissue, they regenerate their identity. Inside their bodies is a huge population of special cells called neoblasts. These are adult stem cells that make up nearly 30% of the planarian's entire body. Unlike human stem cells, which are limited in what they can become, neoblasts are pluripotent, meaning they can turn into any cell type at any time: muscle, skin, digestive tissue, nerve cells, entire brains. When a planarian is injured, these neoblasts rush to the wound site. They don't just repair the damage, they rebuild the animal from scratch, using a genetic blueprint that somehow persists no matter how badly the body is destroyed. Scientists, of course, have tested the limits of this incredible ability. They cut planaria in half, then into quarters, then into eighths. Every single piece regenerated into a complete worm. Then they removed the head entirely. The body grew a new head. They removed the brain again. It grew back again. But here's where the experiment crossed into truly mind-bending territory. Researchers trained planaria to navigate simple mazes by rewarding them with food. Over time, the worms learned the correct path. They formed memories. Then the scientists did something drastic. They cut their heads off. When the heads regrew, the planaria were put back in the maze, and they still remembered the correct path. The memory survived the complete destruction and regeneration of the brain. That should not be possible. In humans and most other animals, memory is stored in the neural connections inside our brains. If you destroy the brain, the memory is gone forever. But planaria appear to store memory information outside the brain itself, possibly distributed throughout their entire body at the molecular level. This suggests that memory isn't just electrical signals in neurons. It may also be encoded chemically, embedded into the organism's very structure. And that realization sent a shockwave through the scientific community. Because if memory can survive total brain destruction in a tiny flatworm, it raises unsettling questions about how memory works in all animals, including us. But regeneration like this doesn't come without a purpose. In the wild, planaria live in environments where physical damage is a constant threat. Predators try to tear them apart. Rocks can crush them. Strong currents can rip them from surfaces. Any normal organism without extreme regenerative ability would go extinct instantly. The planarian solved that problem by making death optional. If a predator bites one in half, the predator gets a mere land. The planarian gets 2 new bodies. This isn't reproduction in the traditional sense. There's no mating, no eggs, no genetic mixing. It's pure asexual replication. Every new planarian that forms from a fragment is genetically identical to the original. Just like with starfish, this creates a potential weakness. A lack of genetic diversity means the whole population can be vulnerable. If environmental conditions change rapidly due to pollution, temperature shifts, or new toxins, entire planarian populations can collapse all at once. Their greatest strength becomes their downfall. But unlike starfish, planaria regenerate incredibly fast. A full body can regrow in a matter of days. A complete brain can form in under a week. That speed is what makes them such valuable subjects for research. Modern medicine is obsessed with the concept of regeneration. How do you regrow nerves after spinal injuries? How do you repair organs without the risk of rejection? Planaria have already solved these problems. They don't seem to age the way other animals do. Some species show no measurable decline in function over time. As long as they keep regenerating, they effectively reset their biological clock. In laboratory conditions, with a steady supply of nutrients and a safe environment, planaria have been kept alive indefinitely. They are, for all practical purposes, potentially immortal. Now, before you get too excited, no, humans can't regenerate like this. We lost that ability far back in our evolutionary history. Complexity came at a cost. We traded widespread regeneration for highly specialized cells and systems. But scientists are now studying planarian genes to understand exactly how this regeneration is controlled and, just as importantly, how it's limited in humans. The fascinating part is that the same genes that tell a planarian where to grow a head instead of a tail also exist in us. They're just locked down, suppressed by other genetic mechanisms. This means that powerful regeneration isn't some alien biology. It's a capability that's simply been turned off in our own bodies. Nature has already proven that it works. Starfish can regenerate their limbs. Planaria can regenerate their entire existence. It sounds like something from a horror movie, but for one creature, this isn't fiction. This is survival. And when humans tried to wipe them out, they didn't just fail, they triggered a biological disaster. There aren't many animals on Earth that can survive being dismembered. Most would bleed out, go into shock, and die within seconds. But starfish are built differently. Not only can they survive being torn apart, but in some cases, they come back multiplied. Clam fishermen off the coast of Narragansett Bay learned this the hard way. The seafloor was overrun with starfish. They were prying open clams with their powerful arms and eating them alive, devastating the local clam beds. Desperate to protect their livelihood, the fishermen came up with what seemed like a logical plan. They started catching the starfish, chopping them into pieces, and throwing them back into the water. The starfish couldn't escape. They couldn't fight back. Problem solved. Except it wasn't. Weeks later, the starfish returned, but this time in even greater numbers. The seafloor became so densely covered that locals described it as a plague. What the fishermen thought was extermination turned out to be mass reproduction. The act of cutting them apart didn't kill them, it helped them spread. Now, despite their name, starfish aren't fish at all. They don't have gills, fins, or scales. They don't even have a backbone. In fact, they don't have blood or a heart. Instead, they belong to a group of animals called echinoderms, which also includes sea urchins and sea cucumbers. There are more than 2,000 species of starfish living in oceans all around the world, from shallow tropical reefs to the crushing depths of the deep sea. Most of them crawl slowly along the ocean floor using hundreds of tiny tube feet, which are powered by a clever system of seawater pressure. And while we all picture that classic five-armed star shape, some species break that mold completely. The massive sunflower sea star, for instance, can have more than 20 arms, and some Antarctic species can grow 50 or more, looking less like a star and more like a spiky, crawling sun. At the center of every starfish is a structure called the central disk. The mouth is located on the underside of this disc. The nerve ring that coordinates all its movements runs through it, and parts of its stomach are housed there too, including one of its most bizarre abilities: the power to push its stomach outside its body to digest prey externally. But most importantly, the central disk is the regeneration hub. This is the key to their incredible power. If a starfish loses an arm, but that arm doesn't have any piece of the central disk attached, it will eventually die. It might twitch and move for a little while, but it cannot regrow. However, if even a tiny fragment of that central disk remains attached to the severed arm, everything changes. That small piece of tissue carries all the biological instructions needed to rebuild an entire body. It's like having a complete blueprint stored in a tiny backup drive. In theory, a single starfish with many arms could generate dozens of new individuals if someone were to cut it up with enough precision. They might rot or just stall midway through the process. But even a small success rate is enough to cause an explosive population boom, just like the fishermen discovered. The process of regeneration starts immediately after an injury. The first thing that happens is cells rush to seal the wound. Because starfish don't have blood, they have something called a water vascular system, which needs to be closed off quickly to maintain the internal pressure that lets them move. Then something truly remarkable happens. Mature, specialized cells near the injury-like muscle cells, skin cells, and even nerve cells do something almost unheard of in the animal kingdom. They revert to a stem cell-like state. They forget what they were and become blank slates again. A small regenerative bud forms at the site of the wound. Over time, new structures begin to organize with astonishing precision. Nerves reconnect. Tube feet emerge from the new arm. Skeletal plates assemble themselves in perfect symmetry. When regeneration goes the other way, when a single arm has to grow an entire new body, the process is even more complex and mind-boggling. New arms begin to form around a newly organized central disc, a complex cascade of signaling pathways with names like WNT notch and BMP guides the orientation, polarity, and differentiation of every new tissue. Every single step must be perfect. Any error can result in a deformed, non-functional creature or simply death. This ability seems almost supernatural, like a superpower. But it comes with a hidden and potentially fatal weakness. Cloning, by its very nature, creates zero genetic diversity. Every single regenerated starfish is a carbon copy of the original. This is incredibly efficient when conditions are stable, but it can be absolutely disastrous when the environment changes. If a new disease appears, or if ocean temperatures suddenly shift, a genetically identical population has no variation to fall back on. There are no individuals who might be naturally more resistant, and this vulnerability became terrifyingly real in the early 2010s with the outbreak of sea star wasting syndrome. All along the Pacific coast of North America, starfish started developing strange lesions. Their arms would twist and then fall off. Their bodies would literally begin to dissolve while they were still alive. Entire populations collapsed within weeks. In some areas, more than 90% of the starfish population died off. The likely cause was a type of virus called a densovirus, possibly made much worse by warming ocean temperatures. But what was so shocking was how uniformly susceptible the starfish were. Their limited genetic variation meant they had limited resistance. The very same cloning ability that once allowed them to multiply uncontrollably now caused them to collapse altogether. Starfish regeneration isn't invincibility, it's a trade-off. It's an incredibly powerful short-term advantage that can become a devastating long-term liability. Cutting them apart doesn't kill them, but that doesn't make them unstoppable either. It simply exposes a fundamental rule of nature, a balance between power and consequence. And sometimes, the very thing that allows a species to thrive is also the thing that makes it most vulnerable. Thanks for watching. If you found this fascinating, do not forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the weird and wonderful world of biology. See you next time.